Welcome to Law Excellence Hindu News Analysis. Today we are going to cover these 5 topics that are appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now coming to the first article. Now this article is saying that India's urban infrastructure financing needs and reality. Now what is the context of the news? This news is saying that India's urban population will be doubled in the next coming decade. So presently it was around 40 crore to it will be becoming around 80 crore. Now the same thing was also addressed by the United Nations Population Fund also said the same thing. Now, this article is saying that now in this context, because of the increasing population, there is a pressure on urban landscape. But because of the inadequate urban infrastructure, this lead to a lot of challenges. To address these challenges, this article is saying that as per the World Bank report, we need around 70 lakh crore of capital investment in developing urban infrastructure so that urban areas are sustainably adapted and absorbing the growing population. Right? Now, this is the context of the news. Now, the article also said that there are certain issues in the urban administration, especially issues at the local level, and he also suggested certain reforms to be taken for sustainable urban development. Now, we will look into it from the main perspective, especially GS paper 2. There is a topic called local governments, right? If you see the previous year questions, it was asked that discuss the recommendations of 13th Finance Commission, which have been for strengthening the local government finances. Now, not only that, previously it was also asked what are the sources of revenue for the urban local government. Now, how these sources can be strengthened and what are the alternative sources. Like this, there are many questions asked. So, local bodies is a recurring topic in GS2. Okay. Now, we will analyze these things from the main perspective. Now, this article mentioned certain challenges, especially regarding finances of the urban administration. Now, it has been said that as it requires 70 lakh crore of investment in the next decade, but it is said that presently there is investment of around only 1% of the GDP towards the municipal finances, especially development of municipalities in the urban areas. Now, this is saying that this is very much less than what is required. Now, another important challenge is tax revenue. Now, it has been said that in the last 10 decades or in the last 10 years, there is growing requirement of infrastructure, exponential increase of public services providing by the urban governments. But the thing is that the revenue is grown only 8%. Now, another important thing this article highlighted, there is a 10% decrease in the revenue sources of urban administration. Now, not only that, it is also said that there is collection inefficiencies. That is, it is said that there is only 5 to 20% of the potential tax resources are collected. Now, this is because of the lack of proper data about the economic activities happening in the urban areas, and this is also because of lack of proper documentation regarding the operations processes that are happening in the municipality areas, right? Now, another important challenge is highlighted as there is only property tax collection of 25,000 crores in a year in the urban areas. Now, this is because of lack of proper documentation to the housing, lack of political will, because of populism and all such things. And next important thing is the cost recovery for services. For example, if government is providing 100 rupees of service, it is able to recover in the fee of only 20 to 50%. That is around 50 rupees. Now, hence, there is less surplus for the government as a revenue to invest in the infrastructure. Now, less absorptive capacity of urban infrastructure. What does it mean? Now, it is being said that 30 to 40% of the urban people are living in slum or dilapidated dwellings. Now, these people are excluded from the mainstream urban services, especially public services. Now, this indicates the lack of observative capacity of urban infrastructure. Now, next, Finance Commission highlighted that only 23% of municipal revenue remains unspent. That means whatever the municipal revenue that is getting, 23% is unspent. Now, this indicating that lack of decisiveness in planning. This is because of lack of devolution of powers. Now, it is been said that powers are not devoluted under the 12th schedule, right? 11th schedule and 12th schedule. 11th schedule is regarding panchayats and 12th schedule is regarding urban areas. Now, lacks political will. Why it is been said that Chennai and Hyderabad only managed to spend 50% of the capital infrastructure. Now, this indicating the lack of political will, lack of political decentralization in decision making, right? Now, not only that, there are devolutions from the central government also in many, for example, Amrut scheme, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation of and Urban Transformation, right? It is said that only 80% of the money allocated is utilized under these schemes. And next, and it is said that only 70% of the money allocated for smart cities mission is properly utilized. Now, this indicates that there is a depth of projects that has to be taken in a timely manner, right? Now, next important challenge is challenges of public-private partnerships. Now, it is said that there is less chances of project specific revenue. Project specific revenue. Now, because of which it is less attractive for the private players or common people to enter into the public private partnership in providing both public services and developing infrastructure. Right now, it is means that in 2012, around 8,000 crore rupees are been part of PPP investments in the urban infrastructure, but now it has been reduced to around 500 crore only, especially in the municipality areas. That is what this article is saying. Now, it is being said that there is a diminishing of commercial attractiveness of urban services. Now, it is being said that urban areas are based on the vote banks like rural areas, so they cannot provide services at the price that is very much remunerative. So, hence, this is less commercially attractive to the private players. Now, this is what this article is saying. Right now, remember these points and data, which is very important from the examination perspective. You can use in your GS paper 2, right? Every year the question is repeating regarding local body finances. It's clearly mentioned in GS paper 2 syllabus. Now, coming to the suggestions given by the author. Now, this article is saying that there is a need to increase enhancing autonomy of the financial commission, right? To ensure that adequate devolution to the local bodies. Now, local bodies should give required financial autonomy to ensure they allocate resources and manage resources at local level as per the local requirement, right? So that there will be less chances in remaining an amount like an unspent amount, like it was said initially here, 23% of money is unspent as per the finance commission, right? So things like this can be avoided in the future. Next, because of devolution of power, much needed private capital can be gained because private sector players will be encouraged because of the less administrative policy, right? Less bureaucratic setup because of devolution. Now it leads to debt borrowing so that municipal bodies can borrow money from the private players and give municipal bonds also, right? Because of the less interest bonds, as it is a government infrastructure projects, high chances of repayment is there, so less risk. Next, this article said there is a need of pipeline of projects that has to be streamlined. Now the article is saying that there is a need of pipeline of project to be projected so that at least half of them to be implemented by the end of the financial year. That is what it's saying. It is saying that around 600 to 800 projects to be in the pipeline so that this encourages the private players also, that government is in a way of capital investment. Now this encourages the private investment also, so that among these things around 250 to 300 PPP projects will come into the limelight, can be realized at the ground level. Now this is what this article is saying. Next, this article also saying that there is a need of decoupling the project preparation from the financial assistance. Why? Because many projects are weighted or halted until the money is financed. Now this article is saying that first of all the project has to prepare detailed project report and planning and social, economic, financial and environmental impact assessments of the project, right? Social, financial, economic and environmental impact assessments, and be ready with that. Now this is what this article is saying. Next important thing is leveraging DPI. DPI means digital public infrastructure. Now this article is saying that we need to leverage digital public infrastructure so that urban services are provided digitally, seamlessly, without any intermediaries. Now this saves money, prevent leakages, right? And it also increases efficiency, effectiveness, and this promotes the revenue. That is what this article is saying. Next important thing is that this article is said about capture the land value, especially in the transport projects. Now this article is saying that there is a need of streamlining and arranging and documentation of government land so that to prevent any encroachments. This government land is very important because in future any projects like metros, railways in the nearby urban areas has to be developed. It is financially friendly, economically feasible for the government. Now these are the things this article is mentioned. Please remember these suggestions and challenges given by this article so that you can use in GS paper 2, right? Now this article is saying that climate deal is a mere illusion. Now what is the context of the news? You know that in Azerbaijan capital Baku, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference COP29 is happening, right? Now recently it came to an end. Now one of the outcome is that now the developed countries agreed to mobilizing 1.3 trillion, right, by 2035 as a climate finance. Now this is the context of the news. Now the developing countries are saying that like India, it does not address the magnitude of the challenge that the world facing because of the climate change. Because developing countries, especially emerging economies, are in a need of developing the infrastructure, rapid economic growth. Now in this context, greenhouse gases emissions is inevitable, right? Now in this context, this lead to increasing expenditure on climate mitigation. And not only that, already certain amount of damage is already happened in this developing countries where the blunt is being paid by the poor people. Now, for them, there is a need of adoption capacity. For that, need certain finance. And for some people, it is already happened damage because of due to climate refuges, landslides. For them, there is a need of loss and damage fund. No, all these things are there. Now, further, the money that is given by the developed countries or pledged to give is not sufficient. That is what now India is saying. Now, from the examination point of view, this is very important. Why? In previous year questions in GS paper 3 mains, it is asked that what are the outcomes of the COP27, COP28, things like that. And what is the India's position? Now you have to know all these things, right? We will discuss this in detail in the coming article. First of all, we will limit ourselves in this article. Now, another important thing mentioned in this article was new collective quantified goals. What does it mean? It means the amount of money that the developed countries need to give to the developing countries. Now, this is what the new collective quantified goal. Now, this is mentioned in this article. Now, India, like many other countries, walked out or raised objection to this $300 billion. What is this? Here, developed countries agreed that yearly mobilizing around $300 billion as a part of its climate finance. Now, this $300 billion is not sufficient. Now, that is what this article is saying. Now, India also objected that developing countries, especially India, not given adequate chance to object the resolution. Even president of this conference of Brazil president also said that it is disappointing that adequate climate finance deal was not finalized. So remember these points so that you can use them as a part of the GS paper 2 and GS paper 3. In GS paper 2, it was asked what is the climate diplomacy and what is the India's role. Now this was asked in GS paper 2 in IR section, right? Now these points are very important. Now just keep this in mind. In the coming days, we will discuss what are the outcomes of COP29 in a very detailed manner, right? Now coming to the next article. Now this article is saying that Speaker must decide disqualification petitions within the reasonable time. This was said by the Telangana High Court. Now there is another article with similar context. That is saying that Rawat blames former CJA for MBA's defeat in elections. Now here the context of the news is this is saying that there is a delay in adjudication of cases regarding disqualification under the anti-defection law. Now because of this delay in adjudication, there is a lack of fear of law, especially among the people who are defecting, politicians. There is a lack of fear of law. That is what this person is saying. Now we will don't go into the controversies and politics all, but we use this context to discuss the anti-defection law in detail, especially from the both prelims and mains perspective. Now if you see previous year questions, it was asked. So this question is asking repeatedly regarding anti-defection law in mains paper, especially GS paper 2. Now if you see previous year question, the role of individual MPs has diminished over the years. As a result, healthy constructive debates on the policy issues are not usually witnessed. How far can this be attributed to the anti-defection law, which was legislated but with a different intention? Now, this is asked in 2013, and later years also it was asked. Now, if you see prelims question, which one of the following schedules of the Constitution of India contains provisions regarding anti-defection? Now, this was asked in the prelims. Now, you know that it is something related to the 10th schedule, right? Okay. Now, in this context, after you know the importance of these things, we will discuss both from prelims and mains perspective. Now, what is meant by the defection? See, defection means shifting in loyalty for the personal gains. That means a person changing parties frequently, right? That is what political defection. Now, what is anti-defection law? Anti-defection law is a legal framework to control this instance of defections among the political parties and political leaders. Now, that is what anti-defection law. Now, this anti-defection law was brought in by the 52nd Amendment Act of 1985. Now remember this 52nd Amendment because in previously prelims questions asked that 52nd Amendment is related to which of the following, right? Now remember 52nd is related to the anti-defection. Now later these provisions in the 52nd Amendment Act was amended by the 91st Amendment in the Constitution. So remember 52nd and 91 are related to the anti-defection law. Okay. Now why this anti-defection law is required? First of all, from the mains perspective. See, it is required for political stability. Why political stability? Because if there is no political stability, there is issues of law and order will come. If there is no political stability, development will be affected. Private sector are not interested to invest in a state where there is political instability, right? In this way, development is halted. Next, maintaining the governance process. For example, there is a lot of public services, welfare services need to be provided to the people, but there is political instability or changing parties in power continuously. These services will be halted. You know, this allocation of welfare services will be halted during time of elections, right? Now next, preventing policy paralysis. What does it mean? For example, if a law is enacted in one house of the state legislature, now if the house is dissolved, what will happen? Now the law has to bring in again and again. In this way, adequate policy cannot be taken. Laws cannot be enacted continuously, right? Next, maintaining party discipline. Now this party discipline is very important for maintaining the and sustaining the vision and mission towards development. And another important thing is curbing money power. If there is no law, then financially influencing people can easily brought MLAs and shift the loyalties easily. So to prevent that, there are provisions in the anti-defection law. Now, another important thing is maintaining the responsibility and loyalty first to the people who voted them, and next to the party who have given the ticket, and next ideological stability. Parties works on the ideological stability, and especially to not to shift that ideological stability, there is an anti-defection law, right? That ideology, whether it is communism, socialism, liberalism, things like that. Next, what are the provisions in the anti-defection law? Now it is being said that from the prelims perspective, remember these facts. Whoever will be defected will be disqualified if they give up their membership voluntarily. They will be disqualified under this law. If they vote or abstain from voting as per the directions of the party, they will also disqualified. Now independent members, if independent member join any party at any time, they will be disqualified. Next, nominated members. Nominated members will be disqualified if they join after expiry of 6 months. Now remember, this was asked in the prelims exam also. Now they will choose that within the 6 months or after the 6 months, things like that. Okay. Nominated members will be disqualified if they join any party after 6 months. Okay, after 6 months. But that means that they can join within the 6 months. Remember these things. Now there are certain exceptions given to avoid disqualification. Just remember these things, that if a person join another party because of the merger, what is meant by merger? If 2/3 of the members of the party join with another party, that means this is called as merger. Now, if a person don't like that merger, he can join another party. He is not subject to disqualification, right? Now that is what here. Next, presiding officer of the volunteer. What does it mean? See, this article or these provisions in the constitution clearly mention that if the presiding officer of the house, that means whether chairman or speaker, if appointed as such, after his appointment, he can give up his party membership to ensure neutrality and non-partisanship. Okay. Now this is one of the criticism, because though it is constitutionally given such permission, no one is giving up their party's membership. Hence, there is a biased decision making. Now this is what one of the criticism. We will discuss that in the criticism part. Okay, later. Now, what are the certain amendments that happened to this act? Now remember that 91st Amendment Act 2003 made certain amendments, right? Now, one such amendment is that to prevent or discourage the defection, it is said the total number of ministers, including Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, should not be more than 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha. Right? This is the same for state level also. At the state level also, the same, it is 15%, but should not be less than minimum 12 ministers should be there at the state level. That is what this article saying. Remember, 15%, you have to remember 50% because UPSC plays with numbers. Okay. And if a person is defected, the defected person is disqualified from being appointed as a minister. Now, this is what given in the constitution itself, the act. And that person is disqualified from holding any remunerated political post. What does it mean? If any political post has any provision of giving salary from the government exchequer, that person is not eligible for this. Next, deciding authority. Who will decide? It is the presiding officer. Presiding officer means who? It is not only speaker. Remember that many people think that only speaker will decide. No. If it is other house, there is Rajya Sabha, things like that, there is a chairman, right? He or she also decide. Next, the decision is subject to judicial review. Yes, the decision of speaker is initially considered as final, but if that decision is arbitrary and unreasonable, then that decision can be subject to judicial review. This is what said by the Supreme Court in Kiheto Holehon 1992 case. Remember this case, you can use this in mains examination. Hence, defection has no immediate and automatic effect because it has to be regional. It has to pass through a certain process. Now, these are what the provisions you have to remember from both prelims and mains perspective. Now, there are certain criticisms also for this. Now, what are the criticisms? Now, you see, it is said that this anti-defection law is curbing the dissent. What is meant by this? This lead to affecting inter-party democracy. What does it mean? See, there are people in the party, maybe they don't like that particular policy. They want to say that because that is part of the freedom of speech, right? But because of the party whip concept and this anti-defection law, if a person voted against them, they can be defected. No, this is against the freedom of speech. Next, fragmentation of parties. What does it mean? See, because of it is said that these provisions of the anti-defection law prevented split of the parties by 1/3 of the members. That is, if 1/3 of the members split, it leads to defection. So it prevented splitting, but it is allowed that wholesale defection. What does it mean? If 2/3 of the members join another body, it is not comes under the split. So because of which it leads to emergence of a lot of small parties. What does it mean? It leads to a lot of unstable governments, hung assemblies, because of which a lot of instability, policy paralysis will be there, right? Because hung assemblies or hung governments has to take decisions on consensus all the time. It requires a lot of time to debate concessions all through here. So hence it prevents forming stable governments, right? It undermines the representative democracy also. Because of misuse of these provisions and frequent defections, it erodes public trust on the elections. That's why it has been said that there is a decreasing amount of voting percentage in urban areas. For example, in Hyderabad, like that cities, it is around only 50% of the voting, things like that. And controversial role of the speaker. Now it has been said that to decide the cases of defection, there is no time limit mentioned in the constitution nor anywhere in the rules. No, because of this, a speaker belongs to one of the party. Obviously, it is from the party in power. He or she is not taking decisions quickly. Hence, this lead to biased decision making. Now, another important controversy against speaker is that now this act clearly allowed that speaker can give up his position to ensure objective decision making. But the thing is that no speaker is giving up. No, that is not criticism. So now certain suggestions given by various committees such as Dinesh Goswami, second year, says that a speaker's decision seems like biased. Now the decision has to be taken by the Election Commission of India or any third tribunal. Now in case of Megachandra case, Supreme Court said that speaker or presiding officer should try to take the decisions as soon as possible. That is around 3 months. Now this is the Supreme Court's direction and recommendation. Now it is being said that this anti-defection provision should be applied only in certain critical motions. What is it? Critical motions. It is about confidence motion, no confidence motion, which can topple the governments. There you have to apply anti-defection. But in other cases, dissent should be allowed because dissent is part of the core of the democracy. So if a person don't like a particular policy of a government, he can show his dissent. They can say that I didn't agree with this, things like that, okay? Next, independent members should be allowed to join political parties because it's part of their political freedom. Now, this is what said by the various committees and reforms. Now, keep this in mind, you can use them in the mains examination, especially JS paper 2, right? Like K.S.M. Megachandra case, Dinesh Goswami committee, things like that, okay? Now, coming to the next article. Now, this article is saying that Viksit Bharat dialogue will be held in January to connect youth to politics. Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi. See, this article is saying that Narendra Modi will address the youth in January 12, that is birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, to ensure that and encourage youth to connect to politics. Now, once Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he has a vision of connecting 1 lakh youth who are from non-political backgrounds to politics. This lead to new blood into the politics, new ideas, energy into the politics. Now, this is what the context of the news. Now, this is what said in the Man Ki Baat. Now, how you can relate this in the syllabus point of view. Now, you can use these points mentioned in this article very smartly in all the papers of your GS paper. For example, it is mentioned that youth has to encourage to join NCC to ensure that it provides discipline, confidence, courage, empathy, decision making, and service orientation. Now, it has been said that PM also associated with NCC in his early stage of his life. Now, he also said that the youth from the border villages or border areas should be encouraged to join NCC to develop the spirit of service in India. Now, you can use this point of as an example in GS paper 3 as a strategy or a suggestion in winning hearts and minds of people, especially locals in the bordering areas, right? Now, another important thing mentioned in this was that recently when he went to the Slovakia, it is being said that the Upanishads have been translated into Slovak language. This is what conservation of Indian heritage. Now, this can be used in the JS paper 1 in India's cultural diversity, that we are not losing our local identity for global identity. Now, you can use this in JS paper 2 also. Now, because now this initiative has been taken by the Indian diaspora. Now, you can say that role of Indian diaspora in conservation of culture, right? In this way, you can connect these things in multiple perspectives. Now, certain case studies also mentioned in Man Ki Baat that certain youth, especially belong to the NCC candidates, doing that promotion of digital payments in the rural areas, promoting awareness about the digital arrest in the rural areas where there is a digital illiteracy, and certain people are providing digital life certificates to the people in the illiterate people in the rural areas. Now, these are the case studies you can use in the GS paper 4. No, these are the examples that add values to your answer, right? Now, another important thing is that in GS paper 4, previously it was asked that youth are not interested in politics. What are the reasons? This was asked in GS paper 4. In GS paper 2, previously a question asked that there is a decrease in trust on the elections among the public, and what can be the suggestions. Now, you can use some of these suggestions also. Okay, the average age in the parliamentarians in India is around above 50 years. Now, things like that, this indicating that there is a need of infusion of young blood, especially youth, into the politics, right? There are a lot of reasons that why they are not coming. Lack of awareness, lack of political socialization at a college level. Now, it has been said that only major universities are conducting elections at the college level, but two-tier, third-tier colleges are not conducting such elections. Now, this prevents decision making. Now, negative propaganda against politics because of the instance that has been seen in terms of defections, corruption, and all these things, right? And increasing use of money and muscle power in the elections. Now, this thing that this creates helplessness among the youth that they have not belong to this area, right? Now, this way, there are a lot of reasons. Now, use these all things in multiple papers, okay? Don't limit yourself to the narrow thinking, okay? Now, coming to the next article. Now, there is a news that is published in the Hindu paper regarding, especially important from the film's perspective. Now, there is an index that is Climate Change Performance Index that was in the news. That is important from the film's perspective because in films it was asked that sometimes this index or report is released by which of the organization, maybe India's rank or something like that, okay? Now, remember that this is published by German Watch, New Climate Institute, and a Climate Action Network, okay? UPSC may change the names and say that it may be UNEP or IUC and something like that. Don't know. Okay? Don't confuse here. It is German Watch, New Climate Institute, and Climate Action Network. Now, India's rank is 10. Now, yes, India saw a drop of 2 spots. Now, remember these facts. And it is mentioned that now you can use this report in the mains examination also in climate change of GS paper 1 and GS paper 3 questions, right? Because it is mentioned that no country performed well enough in all the categories to earn the top rating. Now, this is very important point you can use. Now, this report says that this report tracks the policies, actions, strategies of the countries regarding combating climate change. Okay, it compared the countries' policies, especially climate policies. Now, this lead to transparency of climate policies. It improve competition between the states because of the ranking. It track the efforts and compare. No, this also helps in stock taking the actions taken at many conferences also, right? Now, this provide data and create a certain accountability also. Okay, this is what is important you can use in the mains examination. Now, certain important fact is what are the parameters that this organization taken to rank the countries. For example, it said that greenhouse gas emissions, how much amount of greenhouse gas emissions per GDP, what is the renewable energy consumption in that country, what is the total energy mix or energy use, what is the climate policy or the legal frameworks that are available to promote the green energy or sustainable development. Now, these are the things. Now, it means that it does not track all the countries. It tracks only 63 countries and European Union because this report saying is these 63 countries and European Union constitute around 90% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. Now, in these countries, India is in top 10. Now, this is an appreciable thing because India is one of the leader in climate change advocacy. Now, you can use this report and say that in JS paper 2 also. Now, it is being said that most of the G20 members are polluting in nature. They are releasing a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. They are responsible for around 75% of the world's greenhouse gases. Now, it is being said that in this report, except India and UK, most of them are worst performers. That is, most of them are last in the ranking. Now, that is what this article is saying. Now, keep these facts in the mind so that you can use both prelims and mains examination. Okay? In this way, you can smartly integrate one syllabus point or one news point, multiple GS papers and multiple syllabus points within the same paper. Okay? Thank you. Have a nice day.